Look at all these flowers. They are in full blossom right now, right at the entrance of the MeenaBagh farm stay. This is the month of June, a month of bounty, a month when things flower, a month when we do a lot of pickings on the farm, a month when we harvest a lot of our apricots, our cherries, some of our plum varieties, raspberries, blackberries. So let's go and do a little farm tour. So bang opposite our farm stay, we have this observatory where we have a kiwi plant twining up to the roof. This is the kiwi plant. This is about 1 or 2 year old plant. This is a Hayward variety, if I remember correctly. It hasn't produced us any kiwi so far, but I think it's young. It's only 2 years old. And maybe the temperature is not really favorable for kiwi production over here. It does flower a bit. Some of them have been flowering, but the fruit drops eventually. So this is right now functioning as a aesthetic feature to our observatory over here because it's not producing any fruit so far. I'm gonna pause over here. Did you hear that? Now this is the blue whistling thrush, a beautiful bird which is more black than blue. If you stay on the farm over here, you will be woken up by the haunting whistle of the blue whistling thrush. Do not miss it. It's a beautiful bird and it also nests in one of our cottages down there. It's got a nest over there and we let it nest because we love the song of the blue whistling thrush. From the bungalow and the observatory, this is the path leading up to our main farm. Over here behind me, we had a lot of garlic which we have already harvested. Over here we have almost about 5 to 6 year old bolero tree, and this is going to be harvested. This is I would call it a late harvest variety of apricot because this ripens in the mid of July, and that's actually the worst time for any fruit to ripen because then there is something called fruit cracking because of the excess rains. Now the bolero has never disappointed us. It's always given us a consistent harvest. And this year, we also forgot to thin this tree. And as you can see, some of the branches are almost at the verge of breaking with the weight of the fruit that we have on it. Over here, we have one tree, an apple tree. This apple tree has been grafted with almost about 20 different varieties of apples. Now, this was grafted a couple of years ago. It has not started bearing us those varieties yet, but soon you will see different kinds of apples, different colored apples on this one tree, and that is possible because of grafting. All that we need to do is graft a sign from the variety of our choice, and we graft it on a branch and it becomes that variety. So all of these are different varieties on one tree. So you'll have a golden apple on this branch, you might have a Granny Smith on the other, and you might have a completely different apple on this branch over here. All different varieties, 20 different varieties, all possible because of grafting. So the scion and the graft has healed, as you can see, and this will become a different variety, all 20 different varieties on one tree. As you can see over here behind me, this is a cherry tree with no cherries on it. To be fair, we also did some pickings over here, some harvest, but the harvest was not as big as it was last year. But this year, because of the adverse weather we had during the blossom time, and I'm going to talk at length about it a little later in the video, we do not have a good harvest this year to talk about. We don't have a good cherry harvest or an apricot harvest or the plum harvest. But first, let's do the farm tour. Behind me, you can see, you can count about 7 ducks. Last year at this time in June, we had 38 ducks. Because these ducks, they go all over the farm. They are free range ducks. So they are sitting ducks or any stray dog who wants to come and pick them up. So now we are left with only 7. We are also incubating their eggs so that we can repopulate them on the farm. We need the ducks because ducks are the predators on the farm for us. They are the predators of the slugs that we have. There's a slug infestation on the farm because the frogs are missing. The frogs have gone more or less extinct from this part of the world, and also frog population generally across the world has gone down. The prey species has exploded, and one of the prey species of the frogs was the slugs. These ducks, they love slugs. You will be seeing a lot of leaves on the trees and not fruit because a lot of the fruit has also been picked. It has been harvested. Like for example, from this particular tree, this is the pink cot variety of apricot, and look at the size of these apricots. They are really huge for an apricot. Apricots are usually 50 grams or so. This one over here is easily 100 grams, if not more. This is the pink cot. And this has been thinned. This has been harvested somewhat. We also have a lot of these fruits and berry picking tours where a lot of our guests, they book these tours and they come out and they pick these fruits. So a lot of these cherries, for example, from this tree, they have already been harvested. And the cherries over here on the Sonata, they are heart shaped. And this is very popular on our tours, on our picking tours, and a lot of people want to pick from this tree. That's why we don't have many cherries on this tree because they have already been picked. And we still have some over here. And look at the size of this one, very big. Some of them, unfortunately, as you can see over here, have also been eaten by the birds. Now the birds, they love the cherries, not the apricots as much. This is an apricot over here behind me, and it is almost ready to be harvested, but the birds do not really peck on the apricots as they peck on the cherries. Most of our cherries were taken out by the birds. I have mentioned this in one of my previous videos. Birds are not the natural pest over here on the farm. They're actually a predator on the farm which feeds on a lot of our pests. It's a biocontrol. It's a predator which feeds on the lot of these June bugs that we have, the scarab beetles that we have on the farm, keeping their population down. But what has happened over the years is their natural habitat, their shrubs have been destroyed, are destroyed every year. These shrubs would produce their natural food, their native food, the kind of berries that they would want to eat or they survived on. Now, because their food source has vanished from the forest, they are forced to come into our farm. They are forced now to come into our farm and eat on what they can get. So they peck on these cherries. Now, cherries, of course, look at the size of the cherry. A Himalayan bulbul which feasts on these cherries on a farm, it's a very big fruit for the Himalayan bulbul to eat. So it'll just peck, it'll just maybe damage the fruit a little, take a little chunk out of it, a morsel out of it, and then fly away. But in the forest, the native seed, a native berry that it would be eating, it would fit its bill and it would swallow it whole. That's the kind of food that our birds like, not our cherries. But because we have destroyed the habitat, we have invited this trouble on ourselves. Then we have a cherry tree behind me, and I don't think we harvested anything from this tree because it didn't have anything. Now last year we didn't have that kind of a situation. Last year we had something or the other growing on every cherry tree. Last year we harvested almost about 110 kgs from these small trees, 2 to 3 year old trees that we have over here, and all these trees are growing on a dwarfing rootstock, the Gesla 6 or the Gesla 5 rootstock. They keep these cherries small because we have a high density system over here for the farm. We have a cherry tree over here, and then we have the apricot tree over here. It's high density, not in the sense of a commercial farm, because the commercial farms are monocultures. This has a diversity of different fruits growing alongside. We have over here the apricot, and then over here we have the cherry. Then the next one is a peach, and that's how it goes along. Now this cherry tree is a variety called the Sonata. Sonata is a universal pollinizer. It is a tree which pollinates, which has a genetically compatible pollen to pollinate other cherry trees. And if you're setting up a cherry orchard, you need pollinizers like this. One is Sonata, then I have Sunburst, and there is Lapins, and there's one another. So all these pollinizers are important because apart from the bees which flit from flower to flower, you also need compatible pollen. You need pollen from this tree, you need pollen from the flowers of this tree to sit on the flowers of another variety for the pollination to happen. This is important for a cherry tree because cherries are not self-fertile. Apricots don't have that problem because the apricots are self-fertile, which means that they do not require any pollinizer to pollinate the flowers and produce these fruits. So since we are standing next to this tree, let me introduce you this tree. This is the variety called the Perimasi. This is one of my favorite apricot varieties because this is very sweet. This has a very unusual reddish brown color. Look at the color of this. This is the apricot that we also use for dehydration. We dehydrate a lot of our apricots, and this is the variety, I think, which is best for dehydration because it's very sweet. This is the Perimasi. The Perimasi, compared to the other apricots on the farm, has given us somewhat of a consistent harvest. Not as much of a harvest that we had last year from the same tree, but this has something to show for it. Maybe we might be able to harvest, say, 10 to 15 kgs from this one tree, and it is only a 4-year-old tree, and it is bearing us these fruits which are now ready to be harvested. This has got the full color, and maybe tomorrow we shall start the harvest of the Perimasi apricot. When you cannot ascertain the veracity of a particular sapling, a plum, its origin, I think it's best not to buy it. I bought it blindly, I think almost about 5 years ago, and this has not produced me anything at all. And when I got back to the person that I bought this tree from, he confessed that he himself does not know what kind of a rootstock it's growing on. Because for me, what's important is the rootstock. Because all my trees on the farm, I want to keep them small, and this apparently is a tree which is on a seedling and it's not producing any fruit at all because seedlings take longer for them to fruit. This plum tree has given us maybe 1 or 2 plums. This year I don't see any plums on it at all. There's nothing on this tree, and maybe in a year or two, if it does not perform, I'm going to replace it with a variety that is doing well. And next to it we have our sea buckthorn. I think this is the tallest sea buckthorn we have on the farm. This is almost about 15 to 20 feet now, and all these leaves are looking very healthy. We're going to harvest them as well to make our herbal brew. We make herbal brew out of it. We make herbal tea out of it. Herbal sea buckthorn tea can be made out of it. This was planted, I think, in the year 2023. It has not borne us any berry so far, but the sea buckthorn is a superfood. It's medicinal. It's got a lot of these properties, and even its leaves are useful. So the leaves are going to be used for the herbal brew, and we serve the sea buckthorn tea both over here in a farm stay and also in Cafe Co Blue in Shimla. Next to it, we have an apricot tree. Now, to restate the point, we are not a monoculture, we are a polyculture, growing a lot of things. So we had the cherry tree over there, we had the plum tree next to it, sea buckthorn over here, and the next tree is the apricot, and the tree next to it is the apple, and the tree further down is the plum. So we don't have the same species next to each other. It is a diverse kind of an ecosystem over here. We are following social distancing over here. That's what we learned from COVID. The same plant is not side by side. They're all far apart so that we can stave off any kind of diseases, so that we can prevent any kind of spread of disease which can happen in any kind of monoculture. Whether you're doing organic farming or conventional farming, controlling disease in a monoculture is extremely difficult. So over here, this particular apricot is also going to be ready in a couple of days, and this particular variety is called the Big Red. Now if you look at this tree and if you look at these apricots are not very big. The tree is big, so that's where it gets its name. Its name comes from the size of the tree. Even though the tree is growing on a somewhat semi-vigorous rootstock, myrobalan, and I have shaped it. I have shaped all the trees for that matter, especially the apricot trees, in an open center, or what is called a wine goblet shape, where all these branches are extending outwards. It's very easy for me to harvest. I do not need a ladder to harvest any of these fruits. I do not need a ladder also to prune any of these branches. So this is a dwarfing rootstock comparatively, and the size of the fruit is not as big, but it's clean. Now last year we were battered, especially apricots were battered very badly, and they were not market worthy at all. They were not something that we could sell to anybody, even though we are an organic farm. So we had to use them in mojitos, we had to make jams out of them. But this year, as you can see, all these fruits are very clean, very nice, and this tree has given us a somewhat consistent harvest. Big Red, I have noticed, compared to the other varieties that we have, one is Big Red, the other is Bolero, and there are one or two other varieties. They have given us a consistent harvest regardless of the kind of weather we have had. This is the Big Red, and it's going to be ready in maybe a week for harvest. And then right next to the Big Red, we have this apple tree over here. This is growing on the M9 rootstock, and its neighbor is this plum over here. This particular variety is called the Black Splendor. Now, it's a good idea to put these tags on whatever varieties that you have, because if you have a diverse kind of a farm, then you'll absolutely forget what plant is what. So all our trees are tagged with the names, and this one is the Black Splendor, and it has these plums which are going to be ready maybe towards the end of July. And now what we have to worry about as far as the plums are concerned, and anything which we harvest after the monsoon or during the monsoon, is that we have to somehow prevent this skin from cracking. Skin cracking is one of the biggest problems that we face during the monsoons, and this particular variety, the Black Splendor plum over here, is going to get ready bang in the middle of the rains. Now in the opposite terrace behind me is this apricot called the Wondercott, and the Wondercott has not a single apricot on it because this is an early harvest variety of apricot. All these apricots were ready towards the end of May, and first week of June to second week of June they were all harvested. Now this tree over here has no apricots whatsoever, not because we harvested this, but because it produced nothing at all. This one is an apricot with a very fancy name. It's called Bella de Mela, but it produced nothing at all. Last year we had a good harvest from this one. A year before that we had nothing on it. Only 1 year it produced something, which was last year. This year again it has produced nothing whatsoever. Oh, I can see two apricots over here, thank goodness. There are two apricots on this little branch, but I do not see any other fruit. These are the only two apricots that this tree has to show for it. This is the Bella de Mela. But look at the production on this particular variety, this particular apricot tree, and look at the size of these apricots. This of course is the pink cot. This is the apricot variety we have on the farm, which has the biggest apricots. These are huge, and they will also be harvested maybe in a day or two from now. They are huge, and some of the branches I see over here, for example, this branch here is almost on the verge of breaking with the weight of these apricots. I will have to come in soon, give it some kind of support, otherwise it can potentially break the branch. This has given us a good harvest regardless of the kind of adverse weather conditions we faced during the blossom of most of our stone fruit trees over here. For example, look at this branch. This is fruiting. This has fruits right from the bottom where it attaches itself to the trunk, right from there to the top, all laden with these very big apricots. And we have this pear tree over here. It's only 1 or 2 year old tree, but nothing on it at all. This is the Santa Maria growing on a rootstock again. The rootstock, I think, is I forget the rootstock. I think it's the Quince 29C or something, but no fruit at all. This is the nectarine tree, and the nectarine tree, as you can see, is not very healthy. It is somewhat diseased, but because it's not a monoculture, because we don't have a monoculture of nectarines all over the place, this disease is not going to be transferred elsewhere. This disease is going to be localized to this tree, and it's not going to be transferred elsewhere. What has happened over here, in at least some of the leaves over here, is that we have had what is called a leaf curl disease. This is a typical disease of the peach. Nectarine, by the way, is nothing but a peach without a fuzz. See these nectarines over here? These have a shiny surface. These are of course just walnut size right now. They will become this big. They have a smooth surface compared to the regular peach. What has also been disappointing has been this tree over here called the pink jewel. Pink jewel has the largest plum, and I can barely count one or two on this particular tree. A year before last, this plum tree was laden with these very big pink jewel plums. So this was also impacted by the kind of weather that we had this year during the blossom of the stone fruit trees. And this over here is the vine of the kiwi. Now, if you can see over here, this is a fertilized kiwi which is very small, and I'm not sure this is going to stay on the branch because last year also this fruited and this also fertilized, but these kiwis, they did not really stay, they dropped. So let's see, this has become a really large vine, and we have allowed it to clamber onto these tanks that we have over here, the scaffolding of the tanks that we have over here. It is climbing haywire all over the place. This is not a kiwi that we have really taken much care of, but this has produced us some fruit. Whether the fruit is going to stay on these branches, we don't know. And next to the kiwi vine, we have over here the black locust or the rubenia, and the rubenia has become really very big. This has become almost about 30 feet tall. We planted this in 2023, and this is a very fast growing tree. It is also a nitrogen fixer. The reason that we planted this, and the other reason that we planted this, is because it brings out these fragrant flowers which are really very good for our native honeybees. Now, in the understory of some of our trees, we have planted strawberries, and we have been harvesting a lot of such strawberries. Strawberries actually is the first fruit, first berry that we start harvesting on a farm. And we have been harvesting all these strawberries since I think it was maybe the second week of May, and we are still harvesting them. And some of them we shall also be harvesting towards the autumn, because some of them also fruit a little in autumn. So we have the fruit trees here, and then their beds or their surrounding area has the strawberries. Now strawberries, what they can do potentially is they can suppress other weeds from spreading, because the strawberry also tends to spread. It's a crawler. It crawls all over the place, occupies space, and potentially it will not allow many weeds to get through because it would have occupied a lot of space of these beds. And of course, we'll also get as a bonus the strawberries to harvest. We had a very mediocre kind of a production because of the weather that we had, but we are not complaining as far as the blackberries and the raspberries are concerned. The blackberries and the raspberries, they came into flowering. They flowered much after the frost, much after the adverse weather condition that we had. They woke up from the winter slumber, from the dormancy much later, because of which these were saved, and we have this year, I think we have a bumper harvest. Now, if you're wondering what this bottle is doing over here, hanging over here with this little concoction that we have in it, this is to target one pest called the SWD fly. Now, the SWD fly, it sits and lays eggs inside the ripening berries, the blackberries and the raspberries. And we, of course, want to save our berries from that pest. So this is going to target it in a way, it's going to attract it towards it, because we have vinegar inside, we have some soap solution, we have some sugar syrups, and this concoction is going to attract the SWD fly. It's going to target that particular pest, and it's going to get inside the bottle and drown in this solution over here, and our raspberries and the blackberries are hopefully going to be saved. Now I'm walking in the midst of my berry terraces. I have raspberries on my left. These are all raspberries. And on my right, we have the blackberries. Now these blackberries and the raspberries, compared to the stone fruit trees, they have done extremely well. They are bearing us fruits. As you can see, all of these are fruitlets over here, which are going to be ready. They are going to be red and succulent, and these are the berries that we're going to harvest maybe in a couple of weeks from now. These are the raspberries, and over here on my right we have the blackberries, and the blackberries are weighed in, these vines are weighed in with the berries. Look at the amount of berries on this one branch. All of these will need to be tied up in this trellis system that we have, because the fruiting is a lot and all of these canes will require support. What they also require, and we have already provided, is a hail net over here, a hail cover, because you get a lot of hail over here. But after the monsoon arrives, there is no hail, so they're going to be removed so that they get adequate sunshine. And what we have already harvested, and we had a good harvest of this year, was our garlic. Now what we have done here is we have strung the garlic up over here in these posts that we have. I am also going to now pause over here and make you hear the song of the bush warbler right now, which is, there you go. This is how it goes. It goes, and then this is the bush warbler. This is the song of the bush warbler, and this is what you hear in June. It's, I think, a mating call. You rarely see the bush warbler. It's usually hiding in some bush somewhere making these mating calls. But all over the farm at this time of the year, you hear the bush warbler. Now coming back to something more prosaic, the garlic. Now the garlic over here has been strung. It has been braided over here. One of our volunteers from Israel, they had come and they taught us how to braid all the garlic like this and hang it over here and hang it like this to dry. Now doesn't it look awesome over here? All of this braided, and we have hung it over here in our workstation. And then in the same workstation behind me over here in full blossom is also this tobacco plant. It has erupted in these flowers again. In winters, I had a video where there was snow outside and these flowers were blooming, and they are blooming once again. Now this really defies logic, because we don't take care of this tobacco plant, we don't water it, it's undercover. It beats me where it gets all the water from, where it gets all the moisture from, and look at it thriving. And how the tobacco plant has these very fancy bell-like flowers, pink bell-like, very beautiful, very unique, and they flower in the summer as they flower in the winters. And as you can see, it's also a magnet for the bees. The reason why we want to have this tobacco plant around. Now I'm at the end of the farm tour and back at the bungalow. Perhaps a little explaining why we did not have a good production despite whatever we did on the farm. And we did a lot. We even hand pollinated our plums and our cherry trees. We had volunteers, many volunteers over here on the farm participating in hand pollinating a lot of our flowers, functioning like the bees, literally going from one tree to the next, taking the pollen from the pollinizers and pollinating the trees. Perhaps that's why we had somewhat modest success as far as cherries were concerned, because this valley over here across from me, the Baghi Valley, has a very good production of cherries. But there's a cousin of mine who produces almost about, what, maybe 10,000 kgs of cherries every year, but this year he had only about 65 kgs. A abysmal kind of a production of cherries all over this area. That happened because the farmer is always at the mercy of the weather. He's going to be always at the mercy of the weather, regardless of what he does, what kind of farming practice he has. Now, what happened this year for us, especially for the stone fruit growers who were growing cherries and plums and apricots, people like us, what happened was that during the blossom period, during especially the blossom of the cherries, there was a sudden cold spell. There was also frost, because of which the fertilization did not take place. Like I said, we had enough pollinizers on the farm. We also hand pollinated our cherries, but still there's nothing to show for it because the fertilization did not take place because of the extreme cold. The extreme cold prevented the fertilization from happening, and we had to suffer. But of course, the blackberries and the raspberries, because they flowered much later when it was warm already and there wasn't any cold spell, we have now a potentially very good harvest. So the farmer, no matter what he does, is always going to be at the mercy of the weather.